Hey guys, I wanted to do a quick video tutorial on the do's and don'ts that you should probably know before you get started on doing oil painting with Bob Ross. So me and my husband, we've watched his videos. We were fascinated by how he was doing his paintings, and I'm just one of those people that I'll try just about anything. So I wanted it to go ahead and get started. So I watched quite a few of his videos. I've watched him on Netflix. They have a couple series. YouTube has a lot of his videos. So I was watching them. I was kind of taking notes, and so I went to Hobby Lobby and I got my canvas, I got some paint, I got some brushes, and I thought, okay, that's enough. That's kind of what he uses. And I brought everything home, and there were some mistakes and some wasted money and some canvases that needed painted over. So I actually just kind of wanted to share like some things that I learned getting started in this past week. Just to know that I am a beginner. I'm not a professional artist. I'm just a nurse that works, and I'm a mom of 3, and I absolutely love new hobbies and learning new things. So I just wanted to post a small video, and hopefully it helps you save some money because you need the right supplies and the right kind of things. So I'm gonna flip and I'm gonna show you my latest creation. So I did this one last night, and I still can't believe that I just started this like a week ago. I am so proud of this. However, there were a lot of mistakes. First of all, with Bob, he uses oil painting. So I went to Hobby Lobby and I just bought a set of acrylic painting. Well, acrylic is not what he uses, so I have an extra set that I can't use. So eventually, maybe one day I'll learn how to use acrylic paint. But I did my first video and it turned out absolutely nothing like what he did because I could not blend anything like what he was doing. Acrylic painting is also washed in a different way. It's washed with water, whereas oil paint is washed with paint thinner. There's a couple of different kinds of paint thinner that you can use. Hobby Lobby has a few kinds. I've used this Envy Odorless Mineral. I have actually seen people use baby oil to clean their brushes. Make sure that you watch a tutorial on cleaning and taking care of your brushes because you want them to last a long time. But always make sure that you get the odorless. You don't want to be inhaling any of those fumes when you're cleaning your brushes. So another thing that I learned that most of Bob's videos, he almost always starts his canvas with some kind of primer. So he sometimes will use what's called black gesso, and it's actually, this is acrylic. You're going to use like a 2-inch paintbrush, and you're going to cover the whole canvas on some of his paintings, and you're going to let that completely dry before you prime it with the wet on wet oil paint. So one thing that he will do is, like, I'll show you one that I'm kind of getting started with over here. So you can see he's going to eventually tell me to put clear over top of the black gesso, and then he's going to use a white paint in this area, and this is where the mountain's gonna be. It's gonna have the sky. This is going to be like a rock and waterfall, but you can see how the black gesso, it's completely dry. And then, so when I am absolutely ready to start my painting, I will put the liquid clear or the liquid white on it, and it has to stay wet before I start. Now, this is really important. You cannot do a Bob Ross video without his liquid clear and his liquid white. Now, I don't know if there are other brands out there, but since I was following Bob, I love Bob, and I talk to Bob when I am watching his videos. So I'm not promoting or anything like that. I got mine on Amazon, but if you're going to do his paintings, you really do need to follow the instructions that he gives. There's no way of really cutting in this area. It doesn't blend like how he does. So this is his liquid white, and he actually uses this through his paintings to actually thin out his paint to make the layers stick on top of each other. So when you're following his videos, you can actually like remember to leave this open so that you can use it to thin out your paint in certain areas. So what the liquid white does on a clear canvas is you actually just want to take a brush and you just want to color the entire canvas with this liquid white. But I'm telling you guys, a small amount, like almost like a film. If you use too much, when you start to paint with your oil, it'll all smear and blend together. It doesn't, the color won't, it doesn't work. What do I want to say? If you use too much, the white will overtake it. So I watched a tutorial on a guy that when he put it on his canvas, he literally touched the corners with his fingers and he just had a small amount, almost to where you could just see his fingerprint. Anything more than that, you need to take your brush back over it. You need to wipe it off with a towel, start over. Just make sure what I do is I just put a small amount on and I just keep spreading it all over that canvas to the point where like if I look sideways, I can see just a little bit of gloss, but I can't actually see like wet paint. So he usually uses liquid white. Sometimes he uses liquid clear, which I also have, which actually looks like this. And I haven't used this too much, but he definitely uses this over the black gesso. So if you do the all black canvases with him, which I think are really cool, you absolutely have to have both of those. So another thing that I learned very quickly was brushes are really important. First of all, you cannot use acrylic brushes with his paintings. They don't work. They are too thin. They don't spread the paint correctly. So I bought a couple of Bob Ross brushes, and then I bought a couple of brushes at Hobby Lobby when they had it half off, and some of them have worked really well. Some of them I kind of wasted money on. I can tell you right now, the number one brush that you might want to absolutely spend the money with is a number 2 brush. Bob uses this all the time. So I can also tell you that one thing that is really important is Bob uses a like 20 by 24 canvas. So if you're trying to start out with a smaller canvas, I tried to start out with like the 11 by 14 because I just wanted to practice. I didn't want to spend the extra money on a big canvas. Well, here's a little tip. When Bob is doing certain things with bigger brushes, he's using a bigger canvas. So chances are, if Bob is using a number 2 brush, there might be times if you're using a smaller canvas that you just want to use a number 1 brush, because your painting is not going to turn out the same way that his is, because you need to make your thing smaller than what he's making his. So just think about that you might need to buy the bigger canvas, or you need to adjust your brush size to the same kind of brushes that he's using. But at the same time, your paintings are probably not going to completely turn out to look, because you're going to have less space to work in. So, you know, he may go further of what looks like on his canvas, but you're not going to be able to go as far at certain things. So the number 1 that I bought was the number 2 brush. It actually says Bob Ross on it. One thing that I can tell you about his brush is his bristles are stiff and they're really thick, and there's almost like a tapering that goes all the way around. And if you're trying to use a brush that you would just buy to paint your walls, some of them are angled, some of them are completely flat. They don't work the same way that he does. When he's blending and moving things around and moving paint and hitting it with a certain way, yours will not probably work correctly. So I recommend that you use the exact brush that he's using, because it helps the most when you're really starting out, if you want your stuff to look the same quality that he does. Now, you don't want it to look exactly the same. You want it to be unique in yours, but at the same time, when I started making clouds, I'm still working on my clouds. My clouds are still not completely beautiful clouds. However, I am getting better, and I am learning that really, really thick layers and wet paint and not blending enough is vital when it comes to clouds and layering. So I also bought his number 1 brush. Looks exactly like the number 2 brush. It's just smaller. And then his round brush is really thick. And it's the similar as the number 1 and the number 2 brush. Sorry, my daughter came down as she's playing. She's making a lot of noise. Sophie, shh, shh, mommy's doing a video. Mommy's doing a video. You see her? She's cute. So, okay, round brush. So he uses this in certain ones that, like for bushes and certain clouds and stuff like that. You can watch a lot of his tutorials and change it up if you'd rather use a fan brush in other areas. But if you want it to look as much like Bob's as possible, I tried other round brushes at Hobby Lobby and they did not work the same way. It just, they weren't stiff enough. The oil paint, almost clumped too much, and I couldn't put too little paint on to get it to stick, and then I couldn't put too much because then it just looked like a glob. Another one that he uses a lot is the fan brushes. Now this I did get at Hobby Lobby, and so far these work really, really well. I haven't used, I don't even know if he sells fan brushes. He probably does because he is a genius and had all his stuff for sale. But this was a number 6. I also have a number 3 and a number 0 fan brush for the different sizes based on what canvas size I'm using. So I don't want to use my big fan brush if I'm doing a smaller canvas, but you'll see Bob use the big fan brush. The thing is when you go to Hobby Lobby or if you buy any kind of brushes, make sure that it says it's for oil painting. I bought brushes that were not, I didn't pay attention, and they were very flimsy. So you can see how that just kind of fans out, and it's really, really, really soft. When I put oil paint on this, my bristles clump together and they don't work right. These ones, these are really, really stiff. So when I put paint on this, it actually stays like that. That way when I'm tapping, it's not just like pressing down and giving me all these weird like strokes compared to what he does. So make sure that when you're buying your fan brush that the bristles are really, really stiff and that there's a lot of them, because you want to make sure that when you're tapping the edge that you're going to be able to get those bristles. He uses pretty much one knife the whole time. I don't usually see him switch to smaller knives too often, but I just bought like a standard, I don't even think there's really a size on this one, but I do notice that it is a little bit easier if you could have a smaller size if you're trying to work with smaller canvases, because one thing that Bob loves to do on his mountains is he loves to use these. And when you're using snow on a mountain, if this is too big, it is really hard to get the angle right when you're sliding it down to spread that oil paint down on the mountain. So I do recommend having at least 2 different sizes of this. He also uses this a lot to mix his paint and his colors. And this actually wipes away really, really easy. So that is actually pretty much all I have. I actually have just been also using Hobby Lobby's Master Touch oil paints. Bob tells you at the very beginning of all of his videos exactly what colors he's using, and for the most part they're very, very similar. But you can, you know, use anything. He has his palette there. You can pause it, take a screenshot, see what colors he has. One last thing that I actually did is I went to Menards, and cleaning your brushes in between doing Bob's paintings is a horrible pain in the butt. So one thing that I have found is that I went to Hobby Lobby and I just bought a bucket, and inside my bucket is a grate at the bottom, kind of like what you would use to stack like cleaning supplies. So you can see the grate down in the bottom there. So when he goes to beat his brush after cleaning it, he dips it in the paint thinner, okay? So you'll dip your brush in the paint thinner, you'll take it down to the grate, and you'll rub your brush back and forth. So you dip it in, you put it down here, and you mix it back and forth, and you get all that paint and paint thinner off, and it goes into the bucket, and then you can get the lid and put the lid back on the bucket so you know you're not inhaling all those fumes. That is the easiest way that I have seen him clean his number 1 and number 2 brushes. And but for the most part, like the fan brushes, when you're cleaning them, dip them in your thinner, and take a paper towel. Get lots and lots of paper towels. Paper towels are really important because you got to clean off the paint in between switching the colors. If you don't get all that oil off and you don't get all that paint off, you're going to mix colors when you're going. And if you're trying to make a white cloud and you don't clean off your brushes right, but then you also don't want to be running to the bathroom every time you clean your brushes. And I can tell you right now, cleaning oil with paint thinner, it's not fun. It's a mess, and that is the best way and the fastest way to do a painting, because you need to do your paint while it's still wet. And if you're not doing it when it's still wet and you're wasting all this time, his little video tutorials are like 30 minutes. It's gonna take you like 2 hours to do one of his paintings because you're wasting so much time cleaning brushes. So number one, it's oil paint, okay? Number two, get the right size canvas. If you want exactly what he uses, he tells you at the beginning of every one. Make sure that you prep your canvas correctly, because if you don't, it won't turn out right. Make sure that you get all the oil colors that you need, or at least something close to what he's using. Make sure that you got a bucket with a grate in the bottom so that you can hit your brush. He always tells you to beat the devil out of it. That way you can get the brush really, really dry. Definitely when you're blending, you want to make sure that you get all that color out of the brush, and take paper towels and just rub the brush over and over again. Try to get any excess off, and that's pretty much it. Make sure you got your thinner, make sure you have your oils, make sure you have your canvas set, make sure you have a good place to work. Know that oil paintings usually take like a week to dry, so have a safe place to put them when you're done. But that's my tips on my 1 week of learning how to paint with Bob, and I am actually really, really, really proud of this one. So this was my lighthouse that I did for my husband, and I worked really hard at the ocean, and it is by far my favorite. I've done quite a few landscapes, but this one was actually really fun to do, and it was a YouTube video, so you can get on and find it and follow along. But I do recommend that you watch his videos at least a couple times before you actually paint, so that you can kind of pay attention to how he's using his brush, because sometimes he's pushing up, sometimes he's pushing down, sometimes he's just like, you know, whipping his wrist around. And just pay attention to how he's actually painting and what colors he's mixing and how he's mixing them, and how much paint he loads on his brush. That's really important. So, you know, just pay attention to all those details ahead of time, and then when you go to do your, you know, your canvas, you'll be a lot more prepared, and you'll probably have a lot better painting. So enjoy, guys. I hope it saves you some money and some time, and I think Bob would be proud of us. Bye.